In a recent episode of AEW Dynamite, the AEW champion Hangman Adam Page called the AEW Championship the ultimate prize and the most important thing in all of wrestling. And regardless of if you completely agree with that statement, it's essentially impossible to deny the fact that the AEW World Championship has so far been treated with the utmost prestige and respect. From its lineage to the matches that it's been defended in, Pretty Platinum has been booked as one of the most important titles in the world in one of the biggest wrestling companies in the world. Strangely enough, Adam Page was in the very first AEW World Title match, and many people back then thought that he should have beaten Chris Jericho in that match. So these words coming from him are pretty important. I think time and hindsight has shown that Jericho was easily the better decision for multiple reasons. He's a huge name in the wrestling world, and him being world champion, I'm sure got more eyes onto the company. And that name value, that history that Jericho brought to the title, elevated it since day one. Another thing that AEW displayed from day one is that they will not rush anything that doesn't need to be rushed, and that they're more than comfortable holding plans and pulling the trigger on them when the timing is right, regardless of how long it takes. Which is why I find it hilarious when people get angry at the booking of certain wrestlers and complain that they're not featured enough. Personally, do I get frustrated at my favorite wrestlers and their booking? Sure, I'd love to see Andrade doing more than just getting into deals with the Hardy family office, or for Miro to be back on television, or Adam Cole to be launched on a rocket ship. But AEW has proven that patience is a virtue, and hopefully that mindset flows into the fan base more and more. Anyone talented enough, their time will come. Jericho had a fantastic inaugural reign, and his name will always be there as the first ever AEW World Champion. 182 days saw him defend the title against Darby Allin, Cody Rhodes, and Scorpio Sky. And other than his feud with Jon Moxley, his feud with Cody specifically sticks with me for obvious reasons. The stipulation that Cody couldn't challenge for that title and the loss at the hands of MJF, I felt there was so much setup and so much lore written into this feud, and of course with two big names, it was fantastic. The aforementioned Jon Moxley defeated Jericho, and unfortunately for Moxley, most of his reign was held under lockdown, limited crowds, and in front of an empty Daily's place. He still had an incredible 277-day reign and defended that title 9 times against the likes of Brody Lee, Darby Allin, MJF, Lance Archer, and Eddie Kingston. I personally believe that Moxley will be the first ever 2-time AEW World Champion, mainly because of the fact that his reign was during the most affected year for sports crowds, and for me, he kept the belt's prestige and the company's long-term interest afloat during very tough times, and for that, I think he deserves a lot of praise. A lot of people were shocked at Kenny Omega's booking when he first joined AEW, and once again, the fan base showed that they had been conditioned for short-term booking. The slow approach Kenny took was genius. The long-term storytelling that he was able to produce with Hangman and the Elite, that's still going on to this day, was the biggest reward, payoff, and selling point to the AEW fan base. This title reign and the subsequent feud with Adam Page was proof for the viewer that long-term storytelling, meaningful, and thought-out booking could sell a feud, a match, a champion, and a challenger. So far, my favorite champion and favorite reign has been Kenny Omega, and a major part of it is because of how the reign ended. I think a reign's success can be determined through a few criteria. Length and title defenses are certainly a big one. Kenny held that belt for 346 days, defending the belt against the likes of Rey Fenix, Jon Moxley, Jungle Boy, and Christian Cage. Another one is how talked about you are, and as the belt collector, Kenny Omega will always be the face of the Forbidden Doors opening. But most importantly, it's what you do with the title. Where did you get the title, and where did you take it by the time you dropped it? And I think Omega's reign elevated the title more than any other before it. He made a lot of people look good in that time, none more so than the man that defeated him, the man who from day one was the identity of AEW, the heart and soul, Hangman Adam Page. Jericho, Moxley, Omega. When you look at the first 3 AEW World Champions, you have 3 of the biggest names in wrestling in the last couple of decades. But they're all very unique. Jericho made his name in the 90s and early 2000s, a guy that worked all over the world, including WCW and WWF/WWE, an old school name that kept himself relevant for a 30+ year career, a resume that speaks for itself. Jon Moxley, an indie darling who made the move to the biggest wrestling company in the world, was part of one of the biggest stables in the last decade, became world champion there, and decided to leave. He took a chance on himself and an upstart company for the sake of his happiness. He was so important to AEW, and by the time his career ends, I think he'll be known more as an AEW guy than a WWE guy. And then Kenny Omega, A man that did it the unconventional way. When things didn't work out in America, he decided to carve his path to being the best wrestler in the world in Japan. He made it his home. He had matches that will go down as some of the best ever, and he will go down as one of the best ever. And he brought it all to the table when he and his friends took the biggest gamble in wrestling history to start up a competitor in North America. And now, the fourth champion is once again unique in his own way. As I stated previously, the heart and soul of AEW. Adam Hangman Page is fresh off a massive title defense against one of the best to ever do it, Bryan Danielson. And the question on a lot of people's mind is, who is going to be the next AEW World Champion? I don't want to discredit Hangman's reign or look too far into the future, but I wanted to explore some potential avenues AEW could take in booking the next AEW World Champion, and who I think are the top candidates to have Pretty Platinum around their waist after the Millennial Cowboy era is over. I'm going to start with the most obvious choice in my mind of the names that I'll give, and that's MJF. The reason I say it's obvious is not that MJF is the best wrestler I'm going to name, but his path seems the clearest and most logical. And this theory could be very quickly outdated when Dynamite airs and MJF versus CM Punk, but I'm still going to roll with it for now because that match hasn't happened. MJF is in a feud with CM Punk that on paper is 50-50, but in my mind should be MJF's to win. After dispatching a borderline top 10 wrestler in the world right now, MJF himself, being a top 10 guy, should be looking at aiming higher up at one of the wrestlers in AEW that outrank him, the World Champion. One subscriber commented that he doesn't believe any of the four pillars are ready, and truthfully, I can't agree or disagree with that. So maybe it's a touch too soon. Maybe Tony Khan would rather bide his time with his homegrown talent, specifically the number one pillar, and wait for a better opportunity. There's been a lot of talk from MJF himself about the TNT title, so it's far from set in stone that he's next in line for Pretty Platinum. If Tony Khan decides to go another route and decides to cool off a white-hot MJF and relaunch him at another time, the way he did with Hangman Adam Page, one way he could do that is by having him lose his feud to CM Punk and instead having CM Punk go after the world title. I could actually see that happening, but that would most likely leave Punk as the next challenger, and I don't see Hangman's reign being a two-title defense against Bryan Danielson and I assume Lance Archer before dropping that title. For that reason, CM Punk has to be my least favorite of these names. That's not to say that CM Punk isn't in line for a world title reign, and perhaps he gets a second bite at the cherry later on in Hangman's reign, but if he does beat MJF and goes on to challenge Adam Page, I see Punk getting his first L in AEW. Let's say Hangman has a lengthy reign. I think one of the guys whose name should be thrown in the hat, along with a well-established stable by then, is Malachi Black. Admittedly, I do see Malachi probably leaning more into a TNT title reign at some stage before he goes on to challenge for the world title. But realistically, if you did put Malachi in the main event, he wouldn't look out of place at all. He's one of the most believable wrestlers on the roster, and he has a well-established character that's presented immaculately. If we imagine that this would be happening in 6 months' time, I could easily see his evolution to a world champion being a real possibility. Okay guys, it's time. If you've watched every video, you know there's one man I can't forget. Let's stick with the theory that Tony Khan decides it's too soon for MJF and has CM Punk beat MJF but then lose to Hangman. There's one man that's believable enough to take it off him. This man has one of the best characters in professional wrestling today. This man is one of the most dangerous looking men today. This man went on the single best TNT championship reign in that belt's short history. A man who's proved he can be one of the most dominant champions, not only in the company, but in the world. A man who should have gold around his waist. This is the word of the Redeemer, Miro. God's favorite champion needs a championship. Relaunched with potentially his wife CJ Perry by his side as the last piece of the world title puzzle. I'm not asking for too much, am I? The major key in all of this is how long Adam Hangman Page's reign is planned to be. I just can't see Tony Khan booking Adam Page to have the shortest world title reign of the first four champions and up to the current date. I just can't see that happening. I'm very interested in what names you guys would throw out as like a top 3, or if you want to just throw one. I would be very interested to see what the crowd sentiment is at the moment in terms of who should be the next in line to take it off Hangman Adam Page, because I've seen people say yes to MJF, I've seen people say no. I'm sure people don't want to see CM Punk as the world champion ever or just yet. Miro and Malachi are definitely fringe guys who haven't been world champions anywhere else, or at least not at a major league company. So there is a few ways that AEW could go about this, and new additions to the company are definitely going to change that. And I'm certain that within the next 6 months, which is, I assume, how long Adam Hangman Page's run will be, the next sort of 4 to 6 months, there is definitely going to be new people coming into this company. So everything will get changed, everything will get shuffled around. So I want to see what you guys think. Who is going to be the next AEW World Champion? Who is going to have the most important thing in all of wrestling around their waist? If you enjoyed the video, do leave a like to help it out in the algorithm. Like I said, let's discuss it in the comment section below. And sorry for taking a couple of weeks off. I really did enjoy my mid to late January. So once again, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your support, and I'll see you guys in the next one.